Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this presentation. My name is Dave Millett, and I am going to be taking you through a little bit of a quick introduction before handing it off to Shauna. So manual testing is an approach, as you know, that can be time-consuming. We're going to look at alternatives and ways that we can actually improve that. We're going to address how you can operationally streamline, shrink your testing cycles from long-standing projects that take months down to weeks and even days. How quickly you can easily validate core business systems that traverse multiple applications and turn that into a comprehensive regression suite that you can reuse at will. And basically, how you apply best practices in developing a solid test strategy for moving forward within your practice. Before we move forward, a question for the audience. Basically, when you look at managing your QA automation right now or your QA practice, your testing initiatives, is that currently being handled manually, automated, or a combination of both? Naturally, automation is an important aspect of things. I'm going to give you a little bit of a time over here to provide your answers. Let's take a look at the responses. So what we can see over here is a vast majority of you are basically doing a hybrid model of a combination of automated testing and a series of individuals within the audience. About 25% of you are mainly conducting manual testing. A small percentage of you are doing the vast majority of what you're doing from an automated perspective. And this is a strong representation of what we see in the world today, where automation can, due to the limitations on what you can achieve from the coverage, is occupying a percentage of tests, but there's still a vast majority of the testing that's being conducted in a manual fashion. So what we want to be able to do is address that and help you understand how you can achieve a higher degree of automation. So before we go into the presentation and see how Almac achieved goals of attaining higher automation, let me talk to you a little bit about TurnKey Solutions. We're a technology company founded in 1989. We have been an OEM test technology partner of Hewlett-Packard since 1995, and we have been developing technologies on that stack for a quite long time. Privately held and headquartered out of Denver, Colorado. We have offshore operations in India that allow us 24/7 support as well as a good part of R&D. We have a global presence with customers around the world, operations from a sales perspective across the Americas. We offer a solution which basically is fully scriptless technology, allowing you to build out tests and do so without requiring a deep technology background. We are built currently upon the HP ALM technology stack, so allowing you to save that investment in a market-leading technology that you probably already have in-house. Our approach is totally scriptless, non-technical requirements from that perspective, so your business users can get heavily involved in the test creation. And it's really geared towards providing a solution and a tool set for your business users so that your testing center of excellence and QA experts can actually focus in on exploratory testing, deep dives into other areas, and allow your automation framework to really drive value by creating end-to-end flows that will validate the business-centric important transactions that are part of your organizational flows. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Shauna, who's going to take you through an introduction about Almac and talk to you about the processes that they have in-house.
Thanks, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Shauna Quinn. I'm the software test manager for our large ERP system within Almac Clinical Services. Almac itself is an award-winning global contract development and manufacturing organisation. We are privately owned. We're based mainly in Craigavon, Northern Ireland. We have operations throughout the UK, across the US, mainly in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. We also have one in San Francisco, and office for our clinical technologies section. We also have recently opened offices out in Singapore and Tokyo. So the company has grown significantly over the last 30 years and now employs close to 4,000 people. We're made up of 5 main divisions, which is clinical services, clinical technologies, we have pharma, we have diagnostics, and we have sciences. Almac itself, I say, is a growing company. As a growing company, we have found that we have evolved and we use a large ERP system. It was implemented in about October 2012. We went live with a large Oracle ERP system. As a test team, we had no real functional functional knowledge of the system or the end-to-end business processes. We were heavily reliant on the business to carry out the testing and provide support and remove them from their day-to-day jobs, and all the testing that we carried out was manual testing. We did rely heavily on the business at the point of go live, but by the time we'd sort of reached 2014, we were looking at upgrading our ERP system. It was a large project that we worked on. It was a 9-month-long project with 7 manual test cycles, and a team of about 20 business users and business analysts were needed to supplement the test team. It was a 12-week end-to-end user acceptance test, so it was a case of going back to the business cap in hand again, asking them for those resources to supplement the testing that we needed to perform. So at the end of that, we realised that wasn't acceptable. We couldn't, as a test team, we couldn't keep going back and asking the business again and again for resources. So the conclusion was that automation was required.
So before we push forward, I would like to ask a quick question to the audience. When is your next upgrade planned, or your next major event as it pertains to change within your target systems? So when you look at your landscape, you have various systems, ERP, CRM, web applications, and so forth. Within your projects, when would you say your next major milestone will be? Okay. So when we look at the audience's response over here, we can see that the vast majority of you have planned target changes within your landscape within the next 6 months. So many of you might not be tasked specifically to understanding those roadmaps right now. There's a couple of you that don't know, but clearly there's significant change happening within your systems. And this is something that we see a lot in the IT world, right? The more IT evolves, the more there's complexity, the more these systems drive our business, the more we see constant change, and we're tackled with addressing that change in short time frames. As I'm sure was the case for Shauna within her organization as well, where we need to address that challenge and find a way to be able to achieve good efficiency from a test coverage and a quality that we can deliver into production in shortened time frames with more strategic projects that come our way. Shauna, back to you.
Thanks, David. We went through an evaluation. Once we decided that automation was required, we went through an evaluation of 3 automation solutions. So we went through a complete POC process. We wanted to make sure that we were getting the right product for our Oracle EBS system, that it was able to work with the forms, it was able to work with HP Quality Center, which we had, that it would be able to be reusable, that we could enter multiple data scenarios, that we would be able to scale that up or scale it back, and that it was going to be easy to use. As the test team itself, we only had manual experience. We didn't have any automated test experience. We needed to be able to look at the tool itself and ensure that the maintenance was going to be easy. We've sort of evaluated being able to use some of the record and playback scripts. They weren't maintainable given the amount of tests that we needed to create. So we went through that and we compared 3 solutions, and TurnKey ticked all the boxes. It allowed us to analyse the screens and create components. It allowed us to separate the data from the test, which was the main criteria. It was very, very easy to use. We could build flows. All the components were reusable. There was already out-of-the-box content that would get us up and running in some of the areas within Oracle e-Business Suite. And I say the ease of maintenance was a key driver for us, that and the fact that it worked so well with Oracle Forms. So in March 2014, the ERP system upgrade was kicked off. It was a large project that we worked on. We wanted to try and simulate that, and we started looking to put together a team to address that. So there was myself, which is as the QA manager. There was project manager, and she was an Oracle expert as well, provided from TurnKey. There was also 2 test leads from my own team. I put 2 of my senior testers onto the team to ensure the success of the implementation, and there was 1 test automation engineer from TurnKey provided. And then we had on and off support with our business analysts throughout the implementation. The staff that TurnKey provided were key to the implementation, and the implementation that we carried out, we couldn't have done it without them. The approach itself was a core automation team of 2 Almac testers, and I had to ring fence them completely to ensure that their 100% dedication to the implementation. That meant taking them away from core testing that they provided and having to backfill, which was a sacrifice that I had to make as a test manager. So during the implementation stage, the automation team that I put together worked very, very closely alongside the TurnKey customer success team personnel. They were immensely knowledgeable. They were able to help the team through any issues that they came across. I did go on the training that was offered. I made sure that the entire test team went on that training so they could understand what we were trying to do, and they also had a base knowledge of the product, so I would be able to swap testers in and out of the automation team if required. The test creation began. We created new components. We amended existing components that was part of the accelerator pack that came with it. And the customer success team worked alongside us, mentoring us through any issues that arose and also helping us through those initial sort of few months to help us create those components, know what we were doing, how we would change those components to either verify or enter data, how we would suck the data out. So I say they were there holding our hands and providing that guidance throughout.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about training and mentorship. When we think about the process of implementing a technology, it's important to consider that the tool is one of the aspects of what matters. It's also important to take into account the other 2 variables that are very critical for the proper implementation and deployment of a solution, any type of solution for that matter. The first thing that you want to do is naturally you want to be able to make sure that you've assessed your current test scenario. What do your current tests do? Are they the right target as far as achieving the goals that you want to attain within your organization? How are those tests written? What do they cover? Do they cover the right things? And another important aspect is how stable is your application. It's an intricate mix to determine the right place to bring in automation. An environment that is too unstable will require significant maintenance to the tests and might not deliver the value that we want. However, an application that's overly stable and not changing is definitely not a good target to attain ROI. So it's important to choose the right mix. Once we've attained that information and calculated it and have it in hand, we want to assess the various tools. How and where does your organization test? What is the audience and users that will be leveraging the testing technology? Do you have technical individuals dedicated to testing? Do you need to rely upon SMEs, business users? Do you have an automated testing technology? How do you use that testing technology? How often are you getting value? And in reality, if you are doing automation, are you really achieving the type of coverage that you want? Or are you stuck at a level that's not sufficient to where you'd want to be? Do you have efficient staffing within your testing team? Do you have the right skill set within the team to be able to efficiently deploy an automated testing framework to get to the levels that you want? Is it a requirement for you to hire on additional resources or potentially to reallocate resources into new roles? And is there a capability of sharing, integrating roles and responsibilities with an objective of eventually centralizing some of that, potentially building a center of excellence around that? And more importantly than all of this, actually I would say a significant point is make sure that you're consistently getting feedback from the audience, your target audience. What the goal is of deploying these types of things is really to ensure that we're improving quality as we push forward. It's important to track that by looking at how efficient our changes are. Are we seeing less anomalies in production per the changes that we're doing? Is the service perception from our customers better? And, are there significant support issues coming in that we need to address, and how do we target that to make sure that the end user experience is more and more positive as we push forward? Back to you, Shauna.
Thanks, David. So the approach that we initially took was to look at the end-to-end business scenarios that we used during our upgrade. So there was 2 of those that we had ran through user acceptance testing that we needed most business support for, and they were identified as the starting point for this work stream. They will provide us full data flows throughout the system, creating the customer, creating the project, protocol, quote, and bringing that all the way through manufacturing, distribution, and invoicing. The manual tests that fulfilled that, and those scenarios were identified and planned in conjunction with the customer success team, and it was planned to complete in December 2015, and we met that deadline. The first data flow consisted of something like 273 tests linked end to end, and each one of those tests made up of multiple components, and the second one consisted of approximately 176 tests, all linked end to end using the process and using the C Factory tool. The newly created components were linked together with the pre-built components to create the test scripts. So we had new components, we had amended components, and we also had the ones that came initially as part of the accelerator pack, and they were all linked together to allow us to create these individual test scripts. And those test scripts, as I say, were linked together to create test sets and then flowed throughout the entire process. So building the framework, as I say, the first scenario consisted of 273 test scripts linked end to end, each test script containing an average of 20 to 30 components. One master data sheet was allowed us to flow the data through the entire 273 test scripts. And the reusability of the components for future scenarios reduced the time in future test development. So the first scenario and the first large scenario took us from approximately April to September to build out completely, but then we were able to build the next one within a month or two, the large 173, reusing those test scripts and reusing those testing components and just creating a new data sheet and allowing it to link together and flowing the data throughout.
Time for another question, everybody. What percentage of coverage are you getting out of your current testing efforts? So when you look at the testing that you're conducting, would you say that you're really attaining a high degree of coverage out of the tests? And be honest with the answer over here, really. We're trying to get a feel for where we are, where we feel we are from a comfort level, and where we would like to be. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about the reality of what I've seen over my 20-year career in this particular industry. And here we go, okay? So when we look at this, we can see that a part of you feel that you're attaining 75 to 100% of coverage over here. A good part of you feel that you're close to where you want to be. You're somewhere between 51 and 75% of coverage of everything that matters from a testing perspective. Part of you over here feel that you're somewhere between 0 to 25, some of you 25 to 50. I can tell you by experience of having worked with many, many organizations over the years that there's a challenge with attaining this level of coverage, and the more that we move to a DevOps world, the harder it is to ensure that we're attaining that high degree of coverage with consistency. And when we move up in organizations, there's often a feeling of almost running blindly with some of these things because we're just blindsided by the amount of things that need to be done in these complex applications to tackle everything. This is really one of those areas where automation becomes critical. Having the capability of automating those critical processes and being comfortable with running those on a regular basis frees up our test experts to be able to focus in on other areas and ensures that we've got a high degree of coverage that gives us a sense of security. And in all honesty, I would be willing to bet that the individuals that are saying that they're somewhere between 75 to 100% of what matters are leveraging in some form of capacity a mature model from a test automation perspective. And if you want to attain and get to that level, it's important to invest in looking into these areas and getting to that point where an organization like Almac was able to achieve to get to that level of coverage and gain that level of security. Shauna, it's all yours.
Thanks, David. I'd say how TurnKey and C Factory work is you're able to go into your ERP system and go in through the front end. So you can see this is one of our screens with our manual order entry screen, which is part of our distribution section. So you're able to go into the ERP system itself and analyze the screen. So it goes off and it creates a component. So the component, when it's created, looks something like this. You'll be able to see it better whenever the slides go out. But it takes every single field on that screen and it lists them out. So it allows you to say whether you want to input data, whether you want to validate a field, if you're going back in to query on data. It allows you to create your component in the way that you want it to work. It's very, very straightforward. There's no real input from yourselves. You only have to go in and change it from whether it's a validation field, whether it's an input field, but the rest of the work analysing the screen has already been done for you. The components then are started to be linked together then to create a test script, because a component is created for each part of the screen. So there will be a component created for maybe the header part of the screen and then each of the tabs that are on your screen. So each one of those, if I'm creating a manual order, I'll go in and create my header. Well, I'll go in, I'll log in, I'll navigate, I'll create my header, I'll create my tabs, I'll enter all the data into those, and then I'll submit or save the request, and then I maybe want to capture the transaction number or capture the order number that's been produced back. So it allows you to build all those components into one test script that allow you to carry out one function. It also stores everything within your quality center, so you can use quality center as normal. All your components are in there. They allow you to be reused. They allow you to pull them in to create a test script, and then allow the test scripts to be linked together to create your test lab with one overall data sheet. So in here you can see our test labs and this is actually from our quality center. It's from our automation project. So you'll be able to see our test labs and the tests that are within that. And then it allows you to create your data sheet then when you're within your test lab. So your data sheet is where you pump in your data. So how you've created your component, it'll allow you in here to, all your components that are linked together, it'll create one massive data sheet for you and allow you to input the data that you want to see getting pumped into the screen. So you can create variables in there, so it allows your test to be reusable. You can source data from your system and maybe use a certain customer or a certain project that you want to maybe create a lot of distribution orders against. It'll allow you to create you can create all your items, capture those item numbers, and then reuse those item numbers on down within the test. Then this is a screenshot of our quality center and our first end-to-end scenario. So it is complex end-to-end flow throughout the entire system, but it takes a thin slice throughout our entire system. So it allows us it's a full regression pack throughout a business scenario, a live business scenario within our Oracle ERP system. And say it allows you, the data sheet itself allows the data to flow through the test. So you can create multiple iterations on the one. So the master data sheet doesn't limit you to just one scenario. It allows you to build up multiple scenarios. So if you want to create 100 orders, you can create 100 orders. If you want to create 5 orders, but with 10 items that you've created, it allows you to do that. It's fully flexible, and depending on what you want it to do, it'll allow you to do that. It'll allow you to create multiple iterations at certain points. And it will also allow you to flow your data from one test to the next test, capturing the relevant information, whether it's a transaction number, whether it's an order number that you need to reuse on down within your test later on.
This is another time for a question over here. Question that we want to get some information from our audience on. What would you say is your ability to have insight into the impact of a change before it is actually implemented and before you actually end up at a point where you need to test it? So how comfortable do you feel prior to going into a testing phase that you understand what are the areas of your application that are going to be impacted by the change and how that's going to impact your ability to test and what you need to test and the areas that you need to potentially modify from a testing strategy perspective? So if you look at the answers over here, half of you feel that you've got a good expectation or a good understanding of how impact is going to hit your application and what's going to change within it, therefore giving you an idea of what you need to test. However, 25% of you feel that in optics of the actual testing, right, you want to be able to have more information prior to that. And this is important. And again, the more we move to a DevOps type model, the more that we move to a fast evolving world where things are dynamically changing, the less time basically we have to come up to the analysis to understanding these things. So we need to find mechanisms and communication ways and so forth to achieve understanding the notions of change and looking at tools that allow you to do that, such as C-Factory's impact analysis, which will automate that capability of visibility into it, become critical if you want to attaining the assessments of what you need to test and being able to do more with less. Shauna, it's all yours.
Thanks. Right, the scenarios that we've built, as I say, we have 3 main projects running at the moment, running in parallel in 3 separate development environments. So our first project, we have been using the 2 scenarios, executing them repeatedly on one environment to identify issues. We have, as part of that project, we have 3 large roll-up patches, which if anybody's dealing with Oracle, they know that they sort of like to roll up all their patches into one big large patch. So we have 3 of those, and we also have a lot of code in there for changes within distribution area. We were able to, by running those, we were able to identify issues that the patches hadn't been highlighted to, areas where the patches hadn't highlighted by Oracle the impact that could have happened. So our Oracle mobile application broke. We had issues down in billing. We had multiple issues throughout distribution, and we were able to find those by running those 2 end-to-end scenarios, whereas manual testing maybe wouldn't have picked them up until we got up into the system test environment. We were able to find those early in development, raise SRs with Oracle, and also change some of our code. So the automation was invaluable for that project. It was also ran, the 2 regression, the full end-to-ends were also ran as part of formal ST, just to challenge the end-to-end process and to make sure that nothing else had been introduced since the last time that it was run. For Project 2, we executed on a separate environment as part of formal ST cycle. It was full regression because the project hit our business development area, which is in around our quoting, and it also impacted into our finance. So we ran full end-to-end. Again, we found issues in and around our changes made to our customer screens. We also found issues with our billing process when we got through. So the 2 end-to-end scenarios were invaluable with that. We were able to find issues in formal ST. They hadn't been available to run earlier on the project given the timelines, but if we had been able to find that, we maybe would have been able to reduce that ST cycle down further. But as it was an ST cycle that lasted 3 weeks, and we were able to run those 2 regression packs within that. Project 3, we use a subset of the test scripts to create data within the environment, so we're able to pump data into the environment with different scenarios, allowing the guys doing the exploratory testing or the manual testing to consume that data. So we were able to find out what their data requirements were, pump that data in the night before, allow them to utilize that the next day, and then carry out that process again, nightly, to allow them to have enough test data to proceed. Our current results with C-Factory are the initial testing that took us 12 weeks to complete is now down to 3 to 4 days. Those 2 scenarios can run on 2 machines in the same environment, pumping the data through those 2 processes fully end-to-end in 3 to 4 days. The testing that took us 20 people to assist in the process has now been reduced to 1 very, very minimal input by the business if they need certain scenarios, but it's been reduced down to 1 person carrying out all of the tests, and all they're doing is making sure that if it fails, they're checking why it's failed. If there's an issue, they're highlighting the issue, but we've reduced that down to 1 tester rather than 20 people carrying out that testing. And say the coverage, as stated previously, has allowed us to find issues that we were missing in manual testing, as well as we're finding defects earlier. We're finding defects as part of the development process. We're now running these in the development environment while we're carrying out our exploratory testing. It's allowing the developers to turn around fixes quicker. We're also running these two end-to-end scenarios as part of our formal ST to allow us to have a reasonable confidence in the testing that the manual testers have performed. Our current use is, once we created the two end-to-end business scenarios, we asked the question, where do we want to go next? So the main sticking points for us are the monthly support release. We put out a monthly release at the end of every month that puts in bug fixes throughout all of our areas, throughout the ERP system. So it could be distribution, BD, finance. So it allows the support team to ask for data for their regression test for specific scenarios. So if it's a bug that impacts into one area in distribution, but we know we have to regress that extension, it allows us to carry out a mini regression on that. It also allows us to create data to allow that mini regression to take place. It's also run at the end of each month against the support releases. Once the support releases are in there and they've been manually tested, we run the two end-to-end scenarios through the support environment to ensure that the manual testing hasn't missed something, and it provides us with a comfort factor before we go into the live environment at the end of the month. For project work, we are expanding the two scenarios. We have created the two scenarios, but what we're trying to do now is look at the RUPs whenever they come in, the roll-up patches, and carry out the analysis, see where we have gaps, make sure that we're covering those gaps with automated tests, which is what the team's doing at the moment. We had those 3 roll-up patches. We were able to challenge about 70% of what the roll-up patches touched, but there was a gap that we had to sit and we had to look at the gaps in between, and we had to fill that with manual tests. So the next time that happens, we won't have to fill in with manual tests. We'll be able to run that fully end-to-end and challenge those areas of the system that we hadn't touched previously. It'll also, we've been reducing regression timelines in formal ST, but we want to continue to reduce those. So those two scenarios, we're now starting to expand out. Instead of maybe creating 10 distribution orders, we're looking to maybe create 100 distribution orders. We're looking to pump more volume into the system, challenge the system, and see how it's performing with more data getting pumped in, which allows us to more simulate live conditions. It also allows us to create test data for the guys that are working, doing exploratory testing, doing manual functional testing. It allows the data to be sitting there waiting for them, that they can put in their request. They can ask that the guys weeks in advance, 2 days in advance, I need that data on that date, and we're now able to provide that. It also allows us to run end-to-end throughout the system in the projects to make sure that if we make a change in distribution, how does that impact into finance? How does a change against the project, how does that impact into manufacturing? It allows us to, as I say, ramp up the iterations. It allows us to ramp up the amount of data that we can push through, and allows us to challenge more areas in greater depth, allows us to challenge all of our individual scenarios within a certain area, all the different types of distribution orders, all the different types of items. We're able to create all the items now. We're able to put them into our distribution orders. We're also being asked by the business now, they've seen how well we've been getting on in development, running against it in formal ST. We're now asked to support UAT. So we're now creating data for their user acceptance tests. They're still performing their user acceptance tests manually, but we have the data sitting there ready, waiting for them, that they're able to go into their user acceptance environment or their OQ environment, and they don't have to spend weeks setting up data and for a specific scenario and bringing that all the way through. They're able to go, and on a certain date we've scheduled that, yes, we'll have run these data creation scenarios. We're able to go in and your data will be sitting for you on that day. What we're also working on is creating smaller regression packs for extensions with high volumes of change. Anybody who works on an ERP system knows that there's areas that are more in flux than others. So what we wanted to do was create those and make sure that we were able to support the reuse of these within our test environments. So we were, depending on the change that we put through, whether it's a support release or a project release, we would be able to run these smaller regression packs against it. We're also using the automation to create data within the system for all of the different levels: support, project, user acceptance testing. We've little or no reliance on production data, and it's allowing us to save time. So we're able to schedule when we need data created, and we've also removed the reliance on using any production data. We're able to create the data that we need for specific scenarios. The guys have also been able to automate opening all the different finance periods, purchasing periods, all of those different things that need switched on, closed every single month within the dev and test environments. They've been able to automate that and allow them to free up an hour or two of a developer's time or a system test resource every month. So we're looking more and more where we can save time, where we can utilise the automation, and where we can allow the guys to push on. I say the support for the automation has remained the same. There's minimal BA support. The guys ask a question if they need to while they're working on or supporting one of the projects, or if they need more information from a support release, they'll go and they'll talk to a BA. But there's not a BA supporting this full time. It's very, very minimal BA support. The two testers that were originally put onto the team are still the core team. We have been able to swap a tester in and out because they were on the training initially, and the tool is that easy to use that we have been able to swap them in and out depending on whether we need more automation resource to support a project, or whether somebody's off on holidays and we need to have the two automation machines going, or we need changes made quite quickly. But the core two testers remains the same. As I say, the team are fully involved now in our Agile, the 3 projects that we're running. They're involved in project planning. They're able to see what's coming down the pipeline. They're able to plan for what sort of maintenance, what components they think need to be maintained. They're providing the support to the manual tester. What data do you need? How can I help you? What date do you need that on? When are you going into formal ST? I can have your data ready for you. So all of that allows them to sort of preempt and to know what's needed next, and it allows them to plan their work. So they are able to manage the three large projects. They're also able to create data as and when needed, and also support UAT. Lessons learned from our perspective, I would say, is preparation is key. We knew what we wanted to automate, and we knew why we wanted to automate it. It was purely from the point of view we couldn't keep going cap in hand to the business. We couldn't keep asking the business for resources to supplement the test team. We knew that our biggest win would be to try and take those those slices throughout the system. That a full business process throughout the system would give us better coverage than focusing in on one area. We did have the manual steps ready, and we had the flows documented before we went into the automation phase. We had the testers that were going to go onto the automation, making sure that we had all of that detailed before we went in. We had the original tests that they'd ran in UAT, and we were able to put in more detail, making sure that the flow was there prior to commencing any automation. We designed the test flow itself to create and consume its own data, so it doesn't, when we're running the automation, it doesn't impact into any of the testing that's being performed on that environment. We create and consume the data, so the data flows from create customer. We use that customer to create our project. We take that project number, we put it into our quote, we take the quote number, and it just keeps flowing throughout. So it doesn't interfere with any of the data that's going on in the system, unless we are running maybe a regression pack with specific data that the tester has provided. Getting the right people involved was key. We had, as I said, we had a dedicated team two of my senior testers, completely ring-fenced, very, very keen, wanted to learn about the tool, wanted to get involved in automation. They had no automation experience, but the enthusiasm that they had and very, very keen to learn was key to it. They pushed on. If they hit an obstacle, they were willing to work through it. They provided the support that came from TurnKey to aid them through that was fantastic. We were also, the main thing for myself as a test manager was being able to track the progress. So I had the initial scope nailed down. I knew when I wanted them to deliver. I knew when the key milestones were. I ensured that they had the support and were completely ring-fenced and were able to meet those deliverables, because we had tried in the past to automate using another tool and the team wasn't ring-fenced and nobody could get time to look at it. And so to ensure that this was a success, you need a dedicated team. You need to make sure that the team's involved and is keen to learn, and that you do set deadlines. Otherwise, if you don't know what you want to automate and you don't have the right people and you don't know when you want to deliver it, there's no driving force there behind it. So they were the key lessons as a manager that I felt I learned from this process.
Thank you, Shauna. So one last poll question before we take your actual questions and wrap the session up. Is your organization ready to live in a rapid-paced DevOps ecosystem? So we all know DevOps is very much something that everybody is being asked to address. The rapid pace of DevOps is something that clearly, for anybody who's involved in the testing space, something that we need to figure out what we do with and how we actually ensure that we're capable of sustaining the momentum that's going to hit us. So as you can see, DevOps is definitely something that we're all a little bit worried about, let's say, right? I mean, in the testing space, when we think about DevOps and we think about the rapid pace of that, without a proper strategy, without proper tools, without proper process and understanding of how that's going to impact us, there's a risk factor that we need to address. And looking at the answers over here, we can see that almost 40% of you feel unsure about that. 40% of you are answering literally no. We're not ready to live in that fast-paced DevOps model, which is sort of where everything is trending towards. 24% of you, avant-garde, got a handle on that and are pushing forward. So definitely something that I think in our industry we're going to see more and more of, and we're going to have to look at ways of addressing it. And naturally, having a good automation framework and foundation, something that's easy to maintain, is critical to allowing us to do that. It's next to impossible in a purely manual world to address the rapid changes that hit in that type of an environment.
Thanks, David. As he said, the speakers will now be taking questions from all of you, so feel free to keep asking those, and we'll get to as many as we have time for here. All right. What is a realistic expectation of coverage one could expect from using a framework such as TurnKey C-Factory?
I think it's as much coverage as you require, which would be, from my perspective, we required regression initially. We were able to branch that out once we had the key regression packs that we needed, serialized, non-serialized. They were our main criteria. We wanted to be able to challenge the main business processes. So we took the happy paths throughout to allow us to create our regression. But all we've done is build and build and build and build on top of that. But everything that we've done, we've sat back and we've looked and went, where do we need to go next? Where will be the most value added? So I don't know if you want to add any more to that, David.
Yeah, I can add maybe just statistically what I've seen. When we look at implementing a mature framework like this, the whole goal is to attain a high level of automation. I would say that the vast majority of the customers that I've seen can rapidly attain 85% coverage and more of the things that matter to them from a critical path across the different applications that matter in relation to the critical business processes that they need to conduct on a day-to-day basis. So as Shauna said, it's as much as you see a value within your organization, but with proper definition, you could get to a very high degree of coverage in a short amount of time.
Next question here, are you running load and performance tests as well?
We are running performance tests, but we are using Performance Center for that. But the aim in the next year and a half is that we will be looking to can we use the automation to kick off a performance test? Can we use it to monitor how long did that take? But we're doing that anyway. We have timings for how long it takes us to create something, how long it takes us to run through our regression pack or one of our sort of data creation packs. We do have timings for that, but the performance testing and kicking that off will come later.
All right, and another question about the process here. How did you test interfaces?
We have actually got our interfaces stubbed out at the moment, so we do call some code that we've written by our developers, but that's more. We just haven't got to the point where we've had that conversation with TurnKey to see whether we can use cFactory with those.
I'm sure that this is a question that everybody sort of has. When you look at the cFactory technology, anything and everything that your UFT framework supports as far as environments is something that we can test. So your web applications, your Connects Salesforce systems and SAPs and mainframes and client servers are all elements that we can automate, and we can automate the automation, so to speak, in those areas. In the case of Almac, the critical path was initially around their Oracle environment and getting a handle on that. And as Shauna said, they stubbed out communication to other systems to target that, and next optics will be to look at identifying the critical business processes across those different applications and expand automation towards those areas, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Shauna?
Completely correct. That is our goal in the next 3 to 6 months, that we are looking to start automating our integrations.
What type of technology was involved in this effort, such as web, desktop, mainframe?
Initially, it was mainly in the Oracle world, so we're talking about Oracle Java Stack, Oracle Standard Web, and so forth, and the communication across those different systems. The next phase will be to add in those other elements, so the different web portals and the client-server apps and any back-end systems and so forth, and identifying the actual end-to-end flows.
This person wants to know, in a poorly documented application with 100% manual testing, what will be the first step to take to automate testing?
I think your first step is to ensure that your manual tests are correct. If you have your manual tests well written, even if you're 100% manual, if you have your tests written well, then you're able to automate. That's your starting point. You do need to understand your business flow throughout, or your data flow throughout your system. But that, as long as you have well-written manual tests, then you're able to convert them into your automated tests.
How did you report to upper management the savings of the automation?
The automation, I say, we had it measured in scale of business impact. We were taking business users away from their day-to-day job. So it was the cost of those users supporting us. It was also the time it took to run those regression packs. We were able to do what it took a team of 12 weeks to do. We're able to do that in 3 to 4 days now. So the time, and we quantify in time, but we can measure that in how long and how much it cost us to do that, and how much it costs us to do that now.
Here's another good question for you, Shauna. What are some of the lessons you learned immediately following TurnKey implementation?
They supported us that well that anything that we hit, we got through really, really quickly. So if there was any issues that we sort of came across, we were able to pass it to them. They had complete support alongside our, we were fully supported through sort of GMT in time, so 9 to 5 UK time, we were fully supported for that time. If we put an issue in, we got a response straight away. Somebody was on the phone, somebody was doing WebEx with us. There was very, I say, because we were prepared going in with the manual test being correct, we were able, and we knew our data flow that we wanted to automate, which was those 2 regression packs. Anything else was just technical and it was easily overcome.
Great, good to hear. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have, so that will end our event for today. I'd like to thank our speakers, Shauna Quinn and David Millett, for their time, and I'd like to thank TurnKey for sponsoring this web seminar. And, of course, a special thank you goes out to you, the audience, for spending this hour with us. Have a great day, and we hope to see you all at a future event.